I've never seen anything like it before, and to attempt to hit the ball out of there is pure madness.
The winner of the gold medal and the champion golfer of the year is Cameron Smith.
This is the one that I've always wanted to win since I was a little kid. So it just feels pretty amazing to be able to get it done today.
It's amazing that it's my destiny to be the first Aussie to win. Just incredible.
Hello and welcome to episode 117 of Playing from the Tips, which is yet again in special major championship mode with the US Open in the past and KPMG Women's PGA Championship taking centre stage. Jimmy Emanuel here as the host again as we look back at Oakmont and ahead at PGA Frisco, as well as previewing the Travellers Championship and some senior major championship action, all with the extra details and nonsense usually provided by this show. Part of that mix of research, revelry and rubbish every week is the man who until last week was on a tipping hot streak akin to Scotty Scheffler, but now is just another beaten up by Oakmont seeking comfort in not donuts but Lamingtons, Rod Murray.
Yes, Lamingtons indeed. Shane Lowry and I so beaten by the course that towards the end we just picked up our ball without even marketing it.
One of the funniest things I've ever seen.
Yeah, and by then even he had to laugh at it.
I think Clates had a story like that, didn't he? He was playing with Peter Fowler or something, and he went to play his next shot, and he realised he had his marker and his ball in his hand.
Bernard Langer did it in a Greg Norman Holding Classic at the Lakes. Just picked up his ball, and he could also, as he stood up with his ball, you could see him going, something's not right.
It was on the 18th, I think.
Yeah, it was on the last.
Yeah.
I don't think he got done by a shot, but it was like he was in it, and it was costly.
Yeah. Similarly, watching on at Oakmont as the pros battled with the concept of par, Adrian Logue didn't struggle so much, almost troubling par himself on Saturday, that he believes would have got him a ball in the rundown at the Open de US in the latest display of Folie de Grandeur. That's both French.
Yeah,
right. I didn't understand either, so that makes sense.
My score was 4 shots better than Adam Scott's. Basically, that's all I want to say.
I intentionally didn't allude.
He could
to
have
the
top
player.
fived.
I intentionally
He could have
didn't
top
allude
fived
to
with my score.
Yeah.
I intentionally
That
didn't allude.
would that have exempted him for next year?
Hang on. So you've now had a top 5 in the US Open.
Yeah.
Is that where we're at? Nice work.
So I left the player out of your descriptions because that player's probably going to be in the country later in the year. I'll probably be talking to him at some stage. You may be in one of those rooms, and I may point and say him.
I'm not saying the course I played is 4 shots easier or harder than Oakmont. Who's to say? But I just know I had 4 shots better than him. If he'd have had my score, he would have been top 5. He would have been exempt to next year.
I believe he gets exempt to next year anyway.
Does he?
Top 12.
Okay.
And
still would have been
tight 12th. Yeah.
Okay. Well, just
so that streak remains
Jimmy,
alive.
that's not opinion. That's just counting. What Logue's doing there is just simple mathematics.
That's true.
Seemed like in the end he was like he had a putt for like 29 points or something.
Yeah, it was one of those.
It was not good.
No. Before we do get into the third women's major of the year, let's look back at last week. Highlights, lowlights, interesting tidbits. JJ Spawn winning a major, obviously a highlight, and doing it in dramatic fashion that kind of saved a pretty dour final day, I think.
Dour, great word.
Dour, great word. Mm-hmm. Just stop it with the rough.
I hated it.
Well,
stop it.
The wet and the rain showed how bad of a concept it is. That as soon as the weather was where it was, they couldn't play the golf course.
Look, not because it's difficult. Difficult is good.
Yep.
You want difficult, but it neutralises skill. Here is the one area where Logue is absolutely equal of every tour pro in that field, and that's not funny.
Yeah.
That's just not funny. What is the point of that?
It was boring too. It was just like, okay, you've missed the fairway, you're going to lose a shot or maybe 2. Yeah. And that's how's that interesting?
And again, it goes to but if you miss the fairway further away where the crowds have been, because there's big crowds, you are more of a chance.
You always get
Which is always the case with professional golf. That's fine. But when the penalty is so varied in those two situations, it's not an ideal situation. Adam Scott called it. He was asked about playing the Sam Burns and the ruling. We might get to that in a sec. But he said, and if you watch the video, Adam thinks before he speaks. Always.
Mm-hmm. Always does.
And he called it borderline unplayable.
It was referring to the amount of water they'd had.
The amount of water they were having, but the water added then into the way the golf course was. And Adam hit it in the rough a lot on that back nine after the resumption.
Yeah.
And just didn't have a chance to hit an amazing shot that was a risky shot to potentially still put himself into the hunt of it.
Yeah.
It was silly in terms of the
Tyrrell
rough.
Hatton.
Tyrrell Hatton the same.
Absolute clown show of what happened there on the. And what a shame, because what a golf course it is.
Correct.
And could be.
It was
Just cut the
uninteresting
grass
to
around
look
the greens.
at as well. Like, I was very disappointed with the visuals. Like, I couldn't tell apart any hole. I don't know if it was the way the camera was framing the holes, but you just couldn't. There was nothing
I
distinctive.
thought the design stood up really well. You saw the players making decisions on that second hole, for example, the sort of shorter par 4, where you had sort of three options of where to try and hit it
the
with
second was the
iron
star,
hybrid,
really,
3-order, 17. It's reminds me a little bit of 10 at Royal Melbourne West. It's a great hole, but there's a little bit of, hit or miss.
There were
with it.
choices.
Yeah.
But if it had short grass around that green, it would have been.
Yeah. Well,
I don't know,
maybe Tyrrell Hatton would have won.
Or even just grass that you could play from. I mean, they've just made the grass unplayable.
Yeah. Bunkers were better, which is never a good thing, but I mean, that's generally the case in professional golf, that the bunkers are a better spot to be than the
green
rough.
side,
But
definitely. Certainly not in the fairways, though. 6 and 1.5 dozen the other in the fairways, because you couldn't get anything out of the bunkers. They were really. And I know even that's okay. I've got no problem with that.
big lips, yeah.
But just that long grass just kills any chance of victory. As soon as you see the ball miss the fairway, you know. A par from here would be a remarkable effort, and more likely a bogey or worse is what's sort of waiting. I mean, the greens are severe enough. You don't need to.
Well, that's it. There's enough.
If it had been firm yesterday, those greens were backing up still yesterday. If it had been firm, rock hard, who knows? They might still be playing.
Yeah.
It was getting to that point. Friday afternoon, it was starting to dry out, and they sort of thought, "Oh, hang on, here we go." And then the rain came for the weekend, and then that weather, and clearly trying to get it done on the Sunday, which is an admirable thing, and it's a thing you battle with running golf tournaments. But the fact that then it became, because they've got the multi-hole playoff, it was going to be a playoff on the Monday anyway. To be pushing for something that was never a realistic always finish felt a little bit.
What were the solutions, Jimmy?
Well,
Three balls off 2 tees. It's a US Open. You really don't want to do
correct.
that.
And then I think the feeling when they had the break was that they were always going to come back. But I think the players probably thought they weren't going to get finished. But the goal was clearly to get finished. And I think there's going to be a lot of discussion around the Burns ruling. And Cole Porter went out and filmed where the spot was, and it's such an effort to get to this end result of finishing it that it's hurt the tournament. It was a great finish in the end. That there's other reasons to talk about it than JJ Spawn's great play of the last couple of holes, which is disappointing.
Yeah. We see it time and again with the USGA, don't we? It always seems to come to this almost universally.
It's interesting. Like Oakmont as a venue, I don't know now. I was really excited about it. But the way it's set up, and I guess this falls at the USGA's feet, but there's so little window where that place is playable, because right now we've had 2 really wet Oakmont US Opens in a row, and that's been dour and boring. And a monoculture of grass everywhere. Just the visuals aren't even good for a place that could be spectacular to look at if there was a bit better texture and different colours other than just deep green everywhere.
It's a broader problem in golf.
And again, why is it the USGA showcasing unrealistic agronomy like that? It's just, I find it infuriating, and the slow play issues that you would have if there was anything approaching that rough at an average golf course. Anyway, but then you take it to the other extreme. If it got too dry there, imagine if it got too dry, and if it got windy. Like they had no wind. That place is incredibly exposed.
Practice rounds were taking 6 hours.
Well, was it Friday? Tristan Lawrence stood on the par 3 tee there for 23 minutes.
Yeah.
Or par 5 tee. There were 3 groups on it. There was group on the tee, group in the fairway, group on the green, and I think some of them were there. There were 5 groups backed up on the tee behind him. Like just.
So what? There's such a narrow window in which that place is playable and a good, just an interesting visual test as well.
Yeah.
So I don't know about it as a venue anymore.
Well, to give us all a bit of relief and force and forward thinking. At least they go back to Shinnecock Hills next year, where they've never had any trouble.
True. Yeah.
Again, look, it's a fine line, and you sort of feel for them. I understand that you want what we saw at Erin Hills for the women. You know they got it right because I wasn't certain if it had gone too far. You two were like, no, it was perfect. It was right. It was right in the discussion. And this...
They got it right. Unfortunately, there was no wind. It's 2 big USGA events in a row where these courses would have been amazing to see with some wind, but there was no wind.
But as you say, Oakmont, this would have been... You wouldn't have finished with
it would have
wind.
Been.
And if it was firm,
if it was dry and windy, what would they have done? Like, it's just...
Final point on the US Open, I think probably Rory McIlroy and his comments and talking about everything like that, it's just
bizarre,
perplexing, I'd say.
Yeah. He's having a petulant period.
We spoke about it before, about David Duval, Jason Day and all these things. He's hit that point where he wanted to do something, and there's a great thing Ian Woosnam about you have an Everest, and Ian Woosnams was reaching number 1 in the world and winning a major. He did the same both in a week, and he said you either climb back down the mountain, which is a bit of a rocky sort of a period, and then you find another mountain to climb, or you just slide down the other side of it and enjoy the ride back down.
Yeah.
And it's where Rory's at with what's he going to do, and he's taking it out on media. There's a bit of understandable sort of stuff with the driver stuff that's clearly got him upset. That's the driver, I think, of that media conversation. But
I don't think it's the driver specifically. There was
I think that's
he feels disrespected, I think, in the way that came out, and he's entitled to.
Correct.
Is he dealing with it the right way? Probably not. Rory is in a position where if he wanted to, he could ring the head of PGA TOUR radio and say, I didn't like that.
Yeah.
What are you going to do to make that up? And don't do it again. You know, he hasn't chosen to do that. I listened to Ian Carter, who's the BBC guy who was at Oakmont, on their podcast with Andrew Cotter and Eddie Pepperell this morning, and he talked about it, saying that, you know, that's where whilst everyone's saying Rory's not talking to the media, that's where his angst lies. It's with that.
It's with it. Yeah, there was
section of the American.
Someone else described it as, he said, probably a little flippantly, with you guys talking to the assembled group there, and it's not those guys. He even said that, didn't he? Not, I don't mean you guys, but yeah. There's the ongoing growth of the citizen journalist sort of thing where Rory cops more of a whack than anybody. That's got to get to you eventually. You wouldn't read a lot of it, but that's got to get to you. And just
that's true.
It has to get back to you, and golf at the moment is in such a spot with that, particularly in America. You've just got to look at last week, and that pro-live accounts want to make everything about that battle in a week that's supposed to be just about who's going to win the golf tournament.
There's some incredible hatred for Rory,
and
and
Rory is the target of that.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing to have to cope with, and none of us could truly understand what he's gone through with that.
Don't forget also, he's a UK athlete. So he's got the tabloid press in the UK to do with. That's enough for any person for a lifetime, let alone anything else on top of it.
Yeah, correct. Wrapping up the rest of the world of golf, Carlotta Singanda wins an LPGA Tour event for the first time in, I think, 8.5 years. Some would suggest that's how long her rounds of golf take. But
was this her next event?
Yeah, she was too. But of that, at that event, Karis Davidson with a top 10, which is really good to see. Karis has struggled for the last year or so, but really good.
Minjee Lee played all right as well.
Minjee was, I think, tied for 18th. Grace Kim had a good week after she's had a rough run as well. Yeah. And on the LET Access, Justice Bosio lost in another playoff.
Oh, well done, Justice.
This time to a teenage amateur. That Justice seems like a really nice person, but I think there's a deep competitiveness there, and that would have really ground her gears. So I think she'll win out there on that tour. She'll be playing the LET next year, and she'll keep going. She's a fantastic.
A good pathway. So just before we move on, Jimmy, I don't think we actually did say congratulations, JJ Spawn.
Yeah.
Extraordinary play.
Yeah, unreal.
And good on him.
And showed a lot of the players, and everyone kind of went, what's he doing here? But clearly belongs at that level. He's clearly a good player.
No one was more surprised than him, I don't think. Did you see the look on his face? He was literally like the deer in the headlights. Yeah. He could not believe it had happened. Even in the scorer's hut afterwards, he's got his kids there and he's looking at the TV.
When he was doing his score, and he pulled the strip off the bottom that you mark on the other card, and he's going through, and they cut away from it, but it was about to be some of the greatest vision. He got to about the 12th hole and just kind of went, what the? And this big exhale and looked up and started again. It's
interesting because he was so locked in during the round.
Yeah, he was doing an incredible job.
Probably the biggest strength of his game is just how impassive he is. There's no highs, no lows.
Yeah.
Just
good US Open champion.
Absolutely.
For us in Australia, Adam Scott aside, he was the best story on that leaderboard.
Yeah. Finally, on last week, we had a fairly quiet week with just 3 top 10s, although, Rod, you did tip Hai Jin Choi to a runner-up finish, which majors be damned. That's a pretty impressive little tip there, I'd suggest. So we now sit at 30 wins, 78 top 10s for 2025, all of which, and this one is genuinely beyond doubt, are tipping numbers unrivaled by any podcast in the world, global podcast on any sport, with 2 hosts who attended a cognac and perfume event last week.
Indeed.
I would think so.
I don't even think so. I know.
I'm pretty sure nobody else at that cognac and perfume event have a podcast for a start.
Correct. So yeah.
Sorry, can I just back up just a tad? What is a cognac and perfume
Never
event,
you mind.
and why were you attending?
It is for educated and classy people like
dignified, cultured,
cultured, all that sort of stuff.
Is there any beer? Can you get beer?
No, we went to the pub afterwards. And
That's right, get a proper drink. But you stank great while you did it.
On to this week, and as I said at the top, major season continues in earnest this week with the women's game and the LPGA, the big show in town. It is KPMG Women's PGA Championship, which heads to a new venue this week in Fields Ranch East at PGA Frisco, which is about to become a very regular place for golf to visit as the new home of the PGA of America. Logue, tell us about the golf course.
Yeah, I think this is really the world's debut of this golf course, although it did host a senior PGA, which Steve Stricker won with 18 under, which is interesting about how they're going to...
How much longer can that last, that Champions Tour, honestly?
That's topic for a different day.
Yeah,
that is, indeed.
But yeah, Fields Ranch East at PGA Frisco. This whole facility is now the home of the PGA of America, has been for almost 8, 6 or 7 years now. And yeah, they built this golf course as part of it. There's an East course and a West course. The East course was created by Gil Hance and Jim Wagner. So another Hance course. And again, I don't know, another Hance course last week with a lot of rough and along with Wingfoot and all these Hance renovations with a lot of rough. Marion's the same as well. I don't know.
You're just asking questions.
Just commenting.
I'm just asking questions.
Is Gil happy with these courses which he renovates? And then the agronomy is just out of control. Incredible deep.
Not unlike the Adam Scott comment, I would like to distance myself from Adrian Logue.
I doubt he's happy with the wood.
No, I would agree with that.
And the West course was Bo Welling. Created the West course.
Tigers man, is it?
Yeah, yes,
Welling?
correct.
Yeah. Tiger Designs.
So we're on the East course this week. Apparently there was 1 million cubic yards of sandy loam moved to carve through the land that they had here to build this course.
Some loam. Love me some loam.
It's prairie land.
Isn't it just?
Is the way I think you'd describe this. I played a course in Korea that had 10 million cubic meters of rock and soil moved to create it, to carve these fairways out of mountains.
Is it possible to even imagine that? How would you paint a mental picture that somebody could say, oh, yeah, that makes sense?
That's interesting. But yeah, put it another way, 2 years of dynamite shifting stuff, dynamite shift stuff.
Serious landscape.
Before they built any golf. It was just 2 years of dynamiting and shifting.
Take a mountain, take the top off it to create a flat piece.
Several mountain tops.
I'm picturing Harley Cruz on like one of those little hand pump rail things with just a bucket of dynamite going up there every day and just
TNT written on it,
just blowing things up and then
like
riding back down the hill.
Correct.
Yeah, nice.
Anyway, this course is not that. It's far from mountainous. As I said, it's sort of wind-exposed prairie with dry washes, which I think would be a branca in other
places. I was going to ask if that's a branca. Or is it an arroyo?
Arroyo and a branca?
Yes. Arroyo. And it's got a creek, Panther Creek it's called, that bisects a few holes and sort of ripples throughout the course.
Meanders.
Creeks
often meander.
It meanders throughout the course. It comes into play in several places. It's quite an open, windswept looking scene. So again, we've got 3 majors in a row now after Erin Hills and Oakmont, and now this, where there's the potential for an interesting sort of windswept US-based major. So I'm very interested to see that. Some of the holes that will feature, the first is a 526-yard par 5. Not quite a gentle opener. but it's actually quite a challenging hole for a par 5. We'll see how they go there. The 5th has Panther Creek on the right, and so there's some optical illusion. I've seen a lot of photography of this course from sort of ground level, not necessarily drone photography, and it looks visually spectacular, even from the ground for a course that's pretty flat.
Actually looks really good.
It looks really good, yeah. And then, from a drone view, it actually looks amazing. It's really pretty spectacular to look at. 14th, as I said, there's the creek running through, and there's sort of an island green there as well. So, a lot of interesting stuff. I think if you watch the early rounds, you'll start to recognise some of the holes, which, unlike Oakmont.
Chevron.
And there's a fair bit of width to these holes as well. Again, unlike Oakmont, there's 50 to 70 yard wide fairways, and there's the concept of delayed penalty if you put it in the wrong spot here. So
it looks a genuinely interesting golf course.
Agreed.
I wrote something for Golf Australia magazine on Lynn Grant, part of it being the preview for this event, and spent some time on the golf course, and it looks genuinely interesting. It looks like a potentially great women's major championship venue. It's going to host a Ryder Cup eventually. It's going to host a men's PGA, but for this event, it looks really, really good. So it's going to be exciting to watch.
Men's PGA is 27. That's the one that's coming up, and the Ryder Cup might be sometime in the 2030s.
Yeah. Nice. On we go to the players, and Rod, time for your usually unusual list of players to watch.
Yes, Jimmy, and you can imagine how hard I've been working at this pretty much all night.
That's why you got a Lamington this morning.
Since early this morning.
Yeah.
Well, since earlier today. Bermuda grass at the course, I think, Logue, and I think that's going to have an impact because...
So, there's some Zoysia runoffs as well, and Tiff Eagle greens.
Okay, I guess the point being that's sort of Bermuda.
Walking-only golf course, by the way.
Full-time. Even for the public.
Yep.
Excellent. Well
Must
done,
take
PGA.
a local caddy. Yep.
Well done, PGA. Is that now, hang on, is that designed to keep people out?
Don't
or
care.
to ensure that people
Don't
are
care.
walking?
Just a fact I like.
Indeed. The reason I sort of mentioned Bermuda is I do think it has an impact around the greens in particular. There are certain players who do not find Bermuda comfortable, even though, I haven't played golf for a while. I imagine Bermuda is a much different thing to what it used to be years ago when you'd encounter it in Queensland, but it's still got that grainy sort of feel to it. So I think that's going to be a bit of an issue this week. Here's who the bookies think. These are the sort of top 10 in the betting, which I think we'd all agree with. Gino Titikin is the favourite. Nelly Court second. Ronnie Yin, Hei-Jen Choi, Hei-Yan Yu, Celine Boudier, Minjee Lee, Ayaka Furuwa and Lydia Ko. Nobody be surprised if any of those players were at the top of the leaderboard on Sunday. No point having to talk any further about them. There is some value in here, though, Jimmy. You'll talk about Hannah Green more later. She's at $51, according to some of the betting sites, which seems generous to me for a player who's won a major. Jennifer Kupcho, similar. Lynn Grant. Lilia Vu at $100. Have they got
defending
this right?
champ, isn't it?
Well, yeah. I don't think she's going to win, but does $100 seem a bit disrespectful to a player who was number one in the world
Not that long ago.
18 months ago?
It does. Yeah, absolutely it does.
So there's some odd things perhaps happening there with some in the field. The players I think will be interesting, and this won't be a surprise to anybody, both for Matty Burns and our friend of the pod, Dean. Jin Young Ko, who Dean's back caddying for, she didn't go terrifically well at the US Women's Open. This might be more her sort of major. We saw her win in Adelaide, if I'm not mistaken. Was it Royal Adelaide she won the Australian Women's Open?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. And a bit like Nelly Corder, just showed all the shots and that natural vision to see how you can play the game both on the ground and in the air. And I think that'll be kind of important this week. I also think Lynn Grant is criminally high at $51.
Miscut last week.
Yeah, but she's such a good striker and she lives for the big events. I put her in that category of player. Week to week, she's part of a large mass of players who could win. But when the bigger events come around, she feels like one.
Maybe.
Even though she hasn't won one,
Doesn't
she feels
explain,
like one who
it doesn't completely explain why she's not a regular winner yet.
Agreed.
Which is
couldn't agree more.
curious. It's
Particularly
really
with-
curious.
We know the quality of the ball striking and the quality of the swing. So you'd have to think at some point it'll happen for her. You'll talk about the Australians in the field, Jimmy. I do think it will. I think Nellie's going to win this week, so I'm going to tip her because of that Bermuda thing. I had a look at her putting stats, Logue, and your summation of full-blown yips is not supported by the year-long stats, though not necessarily.
I know what I saw.
Yeah, indeed. And the point I was going to make again about the Bermuda grass, She missed some short putts, definitely, at the US Women's Open. That's a very different sort of grass to what
Absolutely.
she grew up on. She grew up in Florida. She is a Bermuda player, and I think that'll work to her advantage this week. So I'm going to tip Nelly. Thought about Jin Young Ko.
Nice. I'm going to tip Lynn Grant because
Somebody should.
she's got to win something and something big at some stage. And last week we talked about before the US Open about whether playing good the week before was a good thing, bad thing, whatever.
Schedule's a nightmare for the women, Jimmy. It's a nightmare.
Exactly. So a miscut doesn't mean a bad thing.
And for the men too, by the way. I might say.
And very much prairie land golf course, so big open spaces is what Lynn grew up on. That's what Swedish golf largely is.
Yeah.
I think there's going to be a real
Scale.
comfort level here. So Lynn Grant for me. Logue?
I'm Gino Tidekun.
Nice.
I mean,
You can't find fault, can you?
No, you can't.
You just can't find fault.
We've gone into the first couple of majors this year thinking she's a really decent chance, and she hasn't really delivered. But yeah, it's going to happen one of these majors.
Mathematically, it kind of has to,
Yeah.
doesn't it? Yeah.
I don't think I've won and done her yet, so that's what I'm going with.
Ferguson.
Yeah.
We might get an
An outsider.
outsider as well. So we'll go to you off the top of that, Logue.
Yuka Sasso.
Nice.
I think she counts as an outsider.
She does count as an outsider because no one knows what she's going to do, including Yuka.
There you go. Don't we all love
I
a
think,
player like that?
I think she could literally have no idea what she's up to. So that's a good tip.
You could do something
Rod?
amazing. Sarah Schmelzel, who just keeps being near the top in these big events. First two of the year, she's thereabouts at some point. She's that kind of player. Bit JJ Spawn-like. If this turns into a tournament of sort of hang on down the stretch, that would suit her. If it's a case of having to birdie the last three, probably not so much her game. But she's a really impressive player. Solid in all departments and spectacular in none, but good in all. So
Nice. I'm going to go true outsider I think true outsider, Mimi Rhodes, who won the Women's New South Wales Open at Wollongong.
when we know what an indicator of form that is.
Correct.
Did she make it down to Dubbo?
No, they didn't go out west this
Probably
time.
still at school with the New South Wales.
Yeah, I think
played
that's
at
probably
Dubbo.
actually right. I watched that and I was very impressed by everything, but particularly ball striking and just. And then she's gone away on the LET and won 2 more times already this year.
Blew a hoolie down there at Wollongong.
Yeah,
too, didn't
and
it?
has
Really.
ability in all sorts of conditions. Was a really good amateur player, has experience, played Curtis Cups and all that sort of stuff. She gets a special invite this week. I think it's an outside tip of she's going to really show something, could sneak a top 10, and she'll be on the LPGA by the end of the year. So
Big call.
that's just me putting a marker that
Yep.
I've got a New South Wales Open story like
As well,
Rod does. And finally, for this event, we take a closer look at the Australians. And as we are now accustomed to on the LPGA, there's a lot of them, 9 in fact this week. Hannah Green, Minjee Lee, Grace.
Just first names would be fine.
No,
Jimmy.
I'm not around it.
Okay.
Hannah Green, Minjee Lee, Grace Kim, Steph Kiriakou, Gabby Ruffles, Cassie Porter, Robin Choi, Hira Naveed, and Karis Davidson. The one name theory is aided by the fact that they're all quite unique names of the players who aren't as higher profile. So there's not many hirers or heroes.
Steph, yeah. When was the last time you got a Steph or a Hannah?
Yeah. Gabriella.
I said of the non-high profile ones. Hannah and Minjee, of course, the headliners as major winners. Hannah won this event in 2019, both in decent form. Probably Minjee a little bit better than Hannah off last week, but neither's probably really been at their best. I think we all assume they're going to be contending a lot more at this stage in their careers, but Hannah does have 5 top 20s this year. She was tied for 12th at the US Women's Open. That's a really good sign for her and the way her game goes at these big events. Minjee's got 6 top 20s, including a runner-up in 2025. Never missed a cut at this event, but it doesn't have her best sort of history, I'd say, of all the women's majors. Grace Kim is the only other Aussie in this field with an LPGA Tour win, but as we mentioned a little while ago, her struggle with her form has been sort of ongoing for the last 6 months. But this is probably her best major, but the majors has been a little bit of a step up for Grace. So it'll be interesting to see how she goes here. While Steph Kiriakou, proven winner on the LET, shown quite a bit of ability this year and at the majors since Evian. She's kind of really grown a level. So you'd expect her to be one of the ones that might feature. And Gabby Ruffles, history with majors, history with big events is very good. Cassie Porter, excuse me, Knows how to win, has won on the Epsom Tour. Really good ball striker, so I think that kind of suits here. Robin Choi is playing really good golf just to get back onto the LPGA, and Karis Davidson, as I mentioned at the top, tied for 7th last week, so trending in the right direction. Top Aussie from everyone, I will take Minjee because she looks like she's just really starting to move into the right way. The putter's now a comfort thing. She's set with it. It's not a question anymore of just getting used to it. So I think she's going to have a really good second half of the year that kind of starts now. Logue?
Cassie Porter for me, I think she's had a pretty good year. She's showing up on leaderboards in early rounds in particular. And I think she'll be thinking to herself, I'm doing that on courses where these other women have been playing week in, week out for years, and I'm new in town and I'm doing okay. Here's going to level the playing field a little bit for her, where nobody's really familiar with this place, and she could see that as an opportunity to really muscle in and do something special. So
Nice. Rod?
I was actually going to go Cassie Porter as well. I had a look at the driving stats this morning. She's up there in among the longer hitters on the tour, which I didn't realise. So that's never a bad thing. And I think the course will probably see there's a little bit of an Australian-ish look to this course, more so than perhaps what we see a lot. It's not that
the bunkers shapes are
it's not
nice.
the dark
There's
green
nice
with
sort of ragged looking bunkers and stuff.
it's not the blinding white sand and the dark green like we saw at Oakmont last week. So perhaps just aesthetically a bit more visual. But since Logue's taken Cassie, I'll go with Steph Kiriakou, because you never know with Steph.
No.
One week it's going to be her week, and everyone's going to go, how does she not win every week when she can play like that? Because when she plays well, she plays unbelievably well. And again, a course that not choked by rough, that will play into her hands.
Nice.
Into her strengths.
On we go, and quite remarkably, again, it's a signature event the week after a major championship for the PGA Tour, up against a women's major as well, but we've been over that a million times now. Rod, tell us a little bit more about the Travellers Championship.
Told you a million times not to exaggerate, Jimmy, and yet here we are. But it still needs to be pointed out again. Why?
Why?
Just why?
Always, Travellers has always been a good event where they always clearly attracted players on the back of the US Open somehow. There was something at play for the players. They used to go and play there.
Voted by the players as great hospitality. Yeah. They're looked after there. Lots of them like to go there after the US Open.
I remember Mark Leishman talking about it's a great event. You just go and have a great wind down after a US Open. It's good fun and it's good compared.
One of the most attended events on the PGA Tour.
Correct, yeah. But why it's a signature event where you make them go, I don't know.
Week after the US Open, off the back of the Memorial, off the back of the PGA, off the back, what I mean? It's just the schedule's out of control. And you mentioned, Jimmy, it's the final signature event of the season. We're in June.
Makes total sense. I don't know what your issue is.
Sense at all.
And the signature events are done for the years. This is the compressed calendar they wanted. Are we agreed that it's not really working necessarily for the best?
Potentially, yes.
This is a serious schedule. If you imagine being on either the LPGA or the PGA Tour over the last 6 weeks and having to figure out where you're going to play.
It's frantic, isn't it?
It's really frantic. And
it's hard enough to know what I'm going to turn the channel to.
That's right.
It's hard enough to decide donuts or Lamingtons in the morning.
Pardon me, but it really is. And the other thing, of course, is tournament suffer because players have to take some time off. So you're guaranteeing you're diluting fields in some of the tournaments in between. It's
even more American centric as well, isn't it? You can't feel
you
can't help but feel it's like, this is all scheduling into the best weather period for America.
So on that, Adam Scott said apparently during the week, I think it was Cara Banks reported during the final round, that really he looks at about 8 events a year now. Obviously the 4 majors, and there's 4 or 5 other tournaments which he considers important. What are they, and why are they not the only signature events? I'm going to say they're Riviera.
Yep. The players.
Colonial for him, maybe.
I would have thought maybe Memorial because of the Jack ties and possibly Arnold Palmer, but I'm not sure. I'd be interested to know what the other 2 were.
Scottish Open, maybe.
There's not that many, is there?
No.
You make those signature events, you can make that work. With 8 of them, and you've got to jam them in the schedule like this, and top players are skipping them, and it's an unsustainable sort of a notion. What's it costing in extra sponsorship for these companies? And is that sustainable? Anyway, all that aside, this is one of the great tournaments of the PGA Tour, the Greater Hartford Open. We probably remember it as...
Anything with greater in the title is a good tournament.
Why can't they keep that? I really think that's a mistake that the PGA Tour has made a lot. They've made a lot of their tournament names generic.
Yeah.
So they can be taken anywhere.
We'll get to the senior major in a moment.
Pensacola Open.
That's right.
Oh, yeah.
The LA Open,
Yeah.
you know, all of those things, those little tiny, you know, I'm sure it's great corporately because you can make it mobile, but you lose something there. I've forgotten this was the Greater Hartford Open because it's been called the Travellers now for so long that you sort of forget that. Losing touch with little stuff. Anyway, signature event, so we know it's an all-star field. Rory, Xander, Scotty, etc., etc., etc. JJ Spawn is playing, but he's got a terrible record here anyway, and I can't imagine that he's going to be up for this week in as much of a way. You got the usual, some of the usual suspects. Bob McIntyre, actually, we didn't mention him, but he was incredibly impressive at that.
He was.
US Open.
What little we saw of him in the coverage.
What little we saw of him on the coverage, almost snuck up and grabbed. It's a sort of a typical TPC course. TPC River Highlands got some funky holes. The 17 around the water is recognisable. But the interesting thing about it is a little bit like the Players' Championship at TPC Sawgrass. Doesn't really kind of favour a player, except maybe the imaginative shot makers. Spieth's a winner here. You might remember he held it out of the bunker. Was it in a playoff with Daniel Berger?
It was indeed.
Hold it out of the bunker to win that. Bubba Watson's won here twice. And this makes the point. One of those was in 2010 in a playoff with Corey Pavin. Bubba Watson and Corey Pavin playing off for a tournament is... We know Corey was special, but tells you the sorts of players, doesn't it, that tend to go well.
Necessarily snarky, but anyway.
My man Rod Funseth won here in 1978. And, Logue, just for you, I can tell you that Dow Finsterwald never won the tournament, but he was runner-up to Jack Jr. in 1958.
Thanks for doing that bit of research for me, Rod. That's
Go the
very
Finster.
happy with that, yeah.
I was just, Command F, D-O-W. Found it on the list. But
Brent Guyberger also won here, one of the other great names.
There's been some really
Mr. 59.
D.A. Wybring.
D.A. Wybring, yeah.
Billy Ray
the 59
Brown.
wasn't here, though.
No.
No.
The Tennessee Open, Tennessee? It was in Tennessee something?
Yeah,
Memphis Open,
Memphis,
I think.
yeah,
Down in Memphis
Memphis.
somewhere. Anyway, Strange in the field, Adam Scott, Jason Day, Cam Davis, and Min Woo. I like Victor Hovland this week. He's kind of made to measure in that mould of Watson. Would you like me to choose somebody else?
No, that's okay. I can.
Well, I'd already moved on because I was going to pick Ben Griffin, but Logue owns him because he invented him, because he's also the sort of player that could probably do well here. But I'm going to go.
I saw some...
Yeah.
Just an aside on Ben Griffin. I'm buying in. I want Ben Griffin to stop. I saw a video of him in a practice round playing clearly with a friend who maybe isn't at that level, who's gotten into the US Open. And he's gone while the friend's hitting his tee shot and intentionally dropped a scorecard behind him as the friend's getting his tee. So the friend goes and picks the scorecard up and gives it back to Ben, who has a Sharpie at the ready and signs it for him and gives it back to him. And that's the exact kind of...
What an elaborate move.
Exact kind of stuff I'm right into. So
That's a strong and devious flex, isn't it?
All in on Ben Griffin.
Yeah, I'm in on it too.
Logue, a tip from you.
He did do quite well at the
very
Open.
much.
So
Very much.
a bad third round, but he sort of stuck in there and came back well in the fourth round. But I'm going to back up my US Open pick again, Xander Schauffele.
Nice.
Good record. Former winner here, maybe? Good record here. I know that.
He sort of showed some signs.
Yeah, I'll tell you what I thought about was Keegan Bradley, who won here in 23 and also bobbed up at the US Open.
Yeah, good thought about.
I think he's a local to the area.
He is
always
indeed.
got
It's his
dozens of family and friends.
It's local to the area, but it's kind of within the same state.
Bradley's a big Connecticut name, isn't it?
It's a close, but it's not quite. You know what? I'll take Keegan.
It's one of the Connecticut Bradleys.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
He is going to play his way onto this Ryder Cup.
Absolutely.
Because he's not going to pick himself. He's determined not to pick himself. He's going to have to play his way on, which means he's going to have to win something, and this is as good a chance as he's going to get.
Final event for the week is the Kaulig Companies Championship, the third of 5 and first of 2 straight weeks of senior major championship golf on the PGA Tour champions. First, who are Kaulig Companies, I hear you ask? Well, Sponsor Watch tells me, and this might be my favourite we've ever had, Kaulig Companies is a growing single-member family office that operates successful verticals inside of multiple industries across the country.
And does it like nobody else by the sound of it.
What does that mean, I hear you ask?
Absolutely no idea.
Well, more research, and not too much research because I liked the mystery. And when I ran into a few more
I'm
blocks,
going to employ a company to do, I'm not sure what.
I kind of went, do you know what? I'm happy with this. It seems to just be a guy, Matt Kaulig, who has a lot of money. And he's got a business called Kaulig Companies. He is the single member family that operates these successful verticals. He owns a racing team. He sponsors this. I don't really know what else.
Logue, is vertical code for something you move in these circles more than we do? What's vertical mean?
It's like an industry.
What industry?
any
No,
industry.
vertical's just a word. When it's not attached to anything like it's not attached to there, you could...
To put it into similar vague terms, let's align on this and circle back. It's that kind of stuff. It's just rubbish.
As long as we're all singing from the same song sheet, Jimmy, everything will be just fine.
Exactly. It is a company based in Ohio, which is where Firestone Country Club is. That is the host tournament, the venue this week.
Oh, the over 50s on the Firestone.
So this is what was called the Senior Players Championship, to go back to that point about tournament names. Senior Players Championship was created as a major event for the seniors, and this is our big... It now has little to no recognition. When
it was a pretty big deal in the seniors vertical, though.
It was, indeed.
In that particular vertical?
Of course,
Firestone as well. There would be horizontal.
Firestone used to be the host of a World Golf Championship every year. Tiger Woods used to kind of win for fun. It's the one he won in the dark against Ernie and all that sort of stuff. It's anyone who's seen it will remember it for tree lines strategically in inverted commas that just border every fairway and just turn around. Big solid trees, big white sand bunkers, very well manicured, very narrow fairways. It's difficult. It's long. It's hard. It's kind of was designed for that World Golf Championship.
I know it's a competitive category, but is it potentially the dullest and worst regular tournament host in the history of golf?
It's in the conversation.
It's Torrey Pines with trees. Torrey Pines is like Firestone by the sea.
It's flatter and it's got less.
Torrey Pines
I've heard it's
be
actually got
interesting.
quite some good movement on the ground.
Okay.
Yeah.
Firestone.
But it's a lot of, but it's like narrow back and forth.
It's just, it's not what you want.
It sounds like Sydney golf.
You imagine you could go to Torrey Pines and think to yourself, imagine what this place could be. I imagine you go to Firestone and go, this is kind of about what this place is always going to be.
Yeah.
Oh, it's like
That's what it feels
Asquith with better.
Oh, that is a deep cut.
I once again distanced myself.
Me too. I was a junior member there.
On to the event. Ernie Els beat Wei Yang by a stroke last year, with both of those players among those to watch again this week. Ernie was at Oakmont because, of course, past winner there, was talking to Adam before the final round. Good.
What do you remind him about?
Yeah, I know. Like, that's like a bit of a, hey, this is the guy.
Listen, don't rule that out either. We all forget
Yeah.
the devastation of 2012 at Royal Lytham for Adam, and he won the next major.
Yeah. Portrush has got a lot.
I was just going to say, it really does.
Ernie, I think, is definitely one of the main players to watch. Jerry Kelly's a 2-time winner here, also one you'd consider, and kind of it's his kind of golf course. Hit it straight, hit some really good wedge shots. Steve Stricker's a multiple-time winner here, but not in the field. He's got issues with discs in his back or something, so I think he's actually undergone some surgery, so not around. And then you've got usuals like Steve Alker, Bernard Langer, and Vijay Singh that you can consider the regulars, but it's all recognisable names. On the Australian front, we think we've got a lot on the LPGA. We've got 10 in the field this week. Steve Allen, Stuart Appleby, David Branson, Greg Chalmers, Richard Green, Mark Hensby, Rod Pampling, Cam Percy, John Sendon, and Michael Wright. And there is not one of those who you wouldn't consider a chance of winning this week.
Agreed.
Absolutely.
I have a memory of Stuart Appleby playing Firestone quite well when it was a WGC event. The rest would have played there quite a bit less, but as senior golfers, Steve Allen's a winner already this year. Richard Green is an unstoppable force. Greg Chalmers is right there as well. So Cam Percy as well. So tips, I'm going to take Richard Green off the table.
Just confirming, this is a major.
It is a major.
And how many senior majors have we had?
They have 5, one of which is only sanctioned by the PGA Tour champions, not the Legends Tour in Europe as a major, which is the...
So confusing.
Is it the KitchenAid?
It's not called KitchenAid anymore, but it's... No, that's the senior PGA.
Oh, I've heard it. I regret asking.
Yeah.
We all do.
Did you mention Angel
I did
Cabrera?
not.
It's multiple major winner this year, isn't he?
He is.
I'm going. He's going to go again. Angel Cabrera.
Going to slam.
Is there a chance for a slam? Has he missed one?
No, he could slam.
Oh, well, we get.
Yeah.
Okay.
Is there? We're all on Angel for the rest of the year.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah. It's impossible to ignore. Okay.
I'm going to go with Ernie, but I just ask one question. I assume, would it be fair to say we are the demographic for this tour? These are the names we grew up with. Probably a little bit less you, Jimmy, but you and
They're
me,
the names
right?
I grew up
You know,
with.
you
for
know
sure.
them all.
Yeah.
And are any of us even moderately interested in this product?
Only because of the Australians and connection. Mm-hmm. I don't... There's nothing that makes me wake up and want to watch that.
If Tiger teed up, I don't think that would help. I just feel like the idea has had its time.
It was great for a while.
It was
wasn't
phenomenal when it
Yeah.
was Arnie and
Yeah.
Jack and Gary Player and all that, but it just isn't that anymore. And then for a while there were really interesting stories. Alan Doyle, he stepped out of his basement with that crazy golf
Yeah,
thing
Alan
and won
Doyle.
everything.
Alan
And
Doyle was great. I remember him
There's a-
contending for US Senior Open at somewhere.
His
Hale Irwin carried
swing
it.
barely went above his waist.
Yeah, well, because he lived in a snow state, and I think he was a hockey player as well, but he could only practice in his basement for like 6 months, and it had a low ceiling.
Yeah. All right.
So this is the golf swing he developed. Then goes out and plays on the senior tour.
Peter Thompson cleaned up there for a while.
But it was interesting for some of those things. But now, I mean, Hale Irwin carried it for ages. Langer's carried it in fairness for the last decade by continuing.
It had its potential little uptick when Mickelson went and played, and straight away it brought this sort of theatre to it. But
I think, can we agree Stephen Alker ruined it?
I think
that's
I think Stephen Alker is going to be the example everyone uses why it shouldn't go away, because he's making an absolute bank. And
he made an interesting
Just me
story.
then.
yeah,
Sort of last year.
he's
Yeah, I
a
just
lovely guy too.
there's no incentive for. I mean, can anybody imagine Rory teeing up on the champion? They don't even turn up for the US Senior Open.
No.
When they turned 50, I think did Norman play it twice or something?
Yeah.
I just don't understand the point of it.
That will just about do us for episode 117. Rod, can we expect, if there's 2 majors on, that you're at least tip one major winner this week and return to form? And what do you get as a reward in your ongoing renovation of this? Do you get a golden microphone? Do you go John Laws?
No.
Pretty big in the podcasting vertical.
I'll get you to explain the various steps on that at some point.
Logue, I imagine we're now with 2 majors again. But you are without peer, as it's been discussed, as a player. So do you go and just break par and then break the hearts of everyone?
I should have prepared something for this. I've got nothing. I'll let you know again after the week.
I look forward to it.
What
Who
player
stood up to the acid test that is Logue scrutiny for the week?
Yeah, what player could have assisted from like my playing style, or done a little
assisted
bit better.
from your playing style.
Yeah.
That's a short list.
Yeah, they could learn a thing or two.
Yeah, okay. You can, of course, follow along with all the action from these events and more on the Golf Australia magazine website, golfaustralia.com.au. Thank you for listening. We'll be back next week on Playing from the Tips.